Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Here, hello, hello.
Good morning.
Let's get this. There we go. Hello. All right. Let's see here. All right, share the screen. And there we go. There we go. Hi. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Hello, hello. And good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're tuning in from. Welcome, welcome. So let's see. So this is the part of the Urban Garden Learning Series. It's our houseplant class. And I've been trying to switch it up. So we're having classes like we're going to have today. Also Q&A file offerings and plant clinics and open forums. So we definitely kind of mix it up and have some different offerings available. So again, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. And for those of you that might be popping in for the first time, we do have a little bit of a flock here. So if you do hear any cooing or singing in the background, Julia has very much been doing her opera singing over the weekend especially. So I'm just going to assume she's going to keep on that on that. So if you do hear any opera singing, anything like that, that's our little Julia here. So yeah, just so that there's wackiness happening behind me. So we're going to be talking about we're going to be talking about repotting stress plants, just a little bit about what might be making a plant stressed and things to keep in mind, things of that nature. So I decided I'm going to just kind of do it more of like a talk, and then I'll bring out a plant here to kind of show you. So it's not just like a bunch of slides. I can actually talk and interact with folks. But I did want to kind of open up just with a general list of common reasons, right, that folks might want to repot. You might feel the need that might be enough of a reason. A lot of folks just get that, like, oh yeah, they're looking at the plant and they just have this like drive, right, where they're like, yeah, I really want to repot that plant, and you can't really figure out why, but you feel like you just need to. But here's just a couple examples, right? So sometimes folks might, and we're gonna go through this list, and I'm just gonna kind of talk about the pros and cons, right, of these types of issues. So the one is that a plant might be in the same pot for a few years. I get this one a lot. Oh, my peperomia, it's been in the same pot for 2 years. I feel that that's way too long, so I think it has to be repotted. So the issue with this is that if your plant is perfectly happy, a lot of plants, for example, that's why I threw in peperomia as an example, they have very shallow roots. So this isn't a plant that's going to very quickly outgrow its pot. And so if it's in a nice sized pot, I mean, for the most part, you probably wouldn't see a peperomia past a 6-inch pot. It's usually 6-inch pot tends to be where they live out the rest of their lives. So it's not something where you would end up like, oh, this plant's going to grow so much that I'm going to need one of those giant pots one day. It's not going to get there. So even though you might feel, right, oh, I've had this plant for 2 years, I really need to repot it, it's not always the case. So it's always time, now, if it's been in the same pot for years and maybe you realize, you know what, maybe this isn't the best pot for it, right? So maybe there's an issue with the pot. That kind of ties in with one that's here lower in the list, which sometimes the pot is just not suited for the plant. So maybe that pot that you had your peperomia in holds in a lot of moisture, and you keep losing a lot of maybe like pops and growth that comes in ends up just dying from rot. And you're like, you know what? I think it's the pot. It's a glazed ceramic pot. This is kind of holding in a lot of moisture. Maybe that's not the best pot to have this in. Those are when you can take those reconsiderations, right? It's like, okay, well, maybe the type of pot isn't working for the plant. So even though I'm not going to switch the size of the pot, I might say like change the actual type of pot that I have. That's perfectly reasonable. Sometimes people just want aesthetically, they just want a pot upgrade. Now, in terms of risk, this is a very risky undertaking. I really think that you should only be repotting your plants. And of course, to each their own. If you really want to, I mean, it's completely up to you. Just part of my recommendation would be, to just avoid repotting unless it's absolutely necessary. So this is when you start to kind of measure risk, right? Risk and reward. And a big issue is that a lot of plants, when they do undergo repotting, what ends up happening? They get very stressed. The roots can get very damaged. You might be as gentle as you possibly can, but more often than not, there's going to be some root breakage. Also, the very delicate root hairs that surround a lot of these big roots too end up getting damaged. And these root hairs are actually the one that are doing the uptake of the water. So this really sets your roots back. They have to basically kind of focus, reestablish themselves, grow again, kind of fix themselves up, start working again before you even see any of that top growth. So first, you might repot it and you're like, well, now it's not growing. And it's been a month and I haven't seen a new leaf. And it's like, well, it's actually it's focusing right now on establishing its roots again before it can even think about putting up growth up top. That's not what it's focused on. It's focused on, it needs that foundation first, and then it'll kind of channel its energy elsewhere. So if you're thinking aesthetically, oh, I just want to change it because I got this really cool looking pot and I want to switch it, I would advise against it and rather say, well, get that same pot, maybe a size bigger, and then put your current pot into that more aesthetically pleasing pot and use it as a display pot. I think that's the best way to kind of work around it. Instead of actually uprooting the entire plant and putting it into a new pot. It's just going to be really frustrating. You can risk putting your plant into shock. You really kind of, like I said, you can knock back some of that growth that would have happened during that growing season. And it's just better. I would just advise against it. If your sole purpose is you just found a cooler looking pot, definitely opt for getting a bigger version of it and just kind of putting them one inside of the other. Another common reason, and I get a lot of questions on pups. So plants that produce pups. So something like the aloe, for instance, right? You see that your aloe plant has put out a pup. And then folks immediately go, oh, I need to repot it. I need to repot it because my aloe has a pup. So that's not always the case. Usually with plants that produce pups, more than likely, a lot of those plants actually put out more than one. And the pups won't be ready to be separated from the parent plant, basically, until at least they're about 1/3 of the size. In some cases, 1/2 of the size is even a safer option to wait for. But then what ends up happening is, if you remove them way too early, they can't survive on their own. And honestly, you can leave the pups on the plant until you can no longer see the soil. So that tends to be better. So a lot of these plants, like aloes, they do like to cluster together. Things like snake plants as well, they very much like to cluster together. So you can leave them there until you can no longer see any soil, and then that'll be a great time to then, okay, I'm gonna break up these pups and separate the plants out. But it's far too early to do so. If you see one poppy, you can still see so much real estate open. Wait until you can't see the soil anymore. That's the best rule of thumb. Um, then sometimes you might come in across a situation um, that can be very stressful for the plant, right? So one being the substrate. So you need a substrate upgrade. So you purchase the plant and completely wrong substrate. A lot of plants that are sold in nurseries, what ends up happening is when they're young, they're actually packaged, they're kind of filled up with a very peaty mix. Sometimes now you're seeing more of a cocoa coir with a little bit of peat inside of it. And this tends to hold in a lot of moisture, and that's good for younger plants. But as the plant matures, depending on the species, of course, but in many cases, once the plant starts to mature, that substrate is no longer adequate. It's holding on way too much moisture and can end up actually causing rot. So you might water the plant and notice, it's in a great lit spot, but this substrate's very muddy. There isn't really air kind of getting through it. When it's like more than a week and the soil is still soaked, it's still sopping wet. Another good sign is when it does dry, it becomes solid, like concrete. It becomes like you can literally take the plant and it's just like one mass. And it's not the roots, right? So it's not that the roots are holding that kind of shape, right? It's the actual substrate is just rock hard. And so what's happening is that type of substrate, when it does become completely dry, it kind of cinches together, and it becomes what is known as hydrophobic. So it's afraid of water, which basically just means the water can't get soaked up anymore. When you do finally water the plant, you're like, holy moly, that's dry. Let me water it. What ends up happening is you pour water on it and it literally just rolls off. It just kind of rolls right off and off to the side, and you're seeing it kind of leave the pot, but it's not soaking your substrate in any way. And even if you bottom water it, sometimes it might just soak up just a little bit at the base, but it doesn't actually penetrate all the way through. And so if that's the case, that can be very stressful for the plants. And so why, right? A couple of reasons. So one, well, the plant is getting severely dehydrated because you're thinking you're watering the plant and there's no water going through. So your roots are getting insanely dehydrated. Let's say when it is moist, it's holding on to a lot of moisture and there isn't a lot of drainage, there isn't a lot of aeration happening in that type of substrate. So you might notice there's no perlite in the substrate. It kind of looks stringy, but there are no spots for for oxygen. And so now your roots are now being deprived of oxygen. So your soils do indeed require oxygen to stay alive. So now they're suffocating on top of being dry, they're suffocating. And so what ends up happening is you're starting to get all of this kind of death in the roots, right? And so if you realize this and, your plant is definitely not root bound, but it's obviously very, very stressed. You can see it's showing you that it's incredibly stressed. Maybe it's drooping. Maybe it's starting to show signs of root rot. So root rot can occur if your plant has been severely dry or if your plant has been severely overwatered. And the reason is that in the case of overwatering, of course, it's constant water. So the plants are deprived of oxygen. They're kind of like completely in this kind of mud, and they're unable to really get the oxygen from the water, and so they end up dying off, and they start the process of decay. So hence that is root rot. And then there's bacteria, fungi, part of that process that infects the entire plant. You start noticing, like, even if you cut the plant inside, you see that it's black in there. It's spread pretty substantially. Now, when it's too dry, the same thing is happening. You have these dehydrated roots, right? They're no longer serving any purpose. When you do water, these they don't get rehydrated to the point where they are actually viable anymore, but they are getting wet. And so what ends up happening is any bacteria, any fungi that is inside of your substrate goes, wow, look, we got some dead matter here. We're going to dig in. And so they'll start to eat those dead roots. And then what ends up happening is that some of those dead roots are still connected to live root tissue. And this is how you end up introducing that root rot into the live plant, and it can easily start spreading. So it can happen either way. It's just dead roots equals root rot. So whether it's due to overwatering or underwatering, both situations can happen. So just so that you're aware, and if you're seeing this, not only like, yes, I need a substrate upgrade, and sometimes you don't know you need a substrate upgrade until your plant's already in a state of panic, basically. Your plant's already showing those signs, and you're like, oh gosh, okay, I need to switch this pronto. And so like I mentioned earlier too, pots that suit moisture needs. So this is something you should definitely make yourself very aware of when you start to repot your plants, is really matching the type of species to the type of pot that you're going to be using. So as beautiful as some glazed pots look, and ceramic, and they're beautiful, and I mean, gosh, they can be really beautiful, they do tend to hold a lot of moisture. So I wouldn't advise that type of plant for something like a cactus, or some type of succulent like a euphorbia. I wouldn't advise it for something like a philodendron, or not even a monstera. Now, folks do sometimes keep their plants in there, and sometimes they don't even have drainage holes, which is even more dangerous. But they have a system, right? They know exactly, it's been there for a decade, and they know exactly how much water to put in there, and more power to them. They've got that figured out. But if you are just starting out, I would advise against that, because you're not going to kind of know exactly how much, and this is where it kind of puts you in this precarious position where you might end up actually killing the plant by accident. So it's just better to be a little bit safer. So something that wants to have wet feet, as they say, so something that wants to have that retained moisture, like a fern, even a spathiphyllum, a peace lily, would love that situation. So plants that actually want to hold on to a little bit more moisture, those types of pots work really well. Plants that like to completely dry out between waterings would prefer something like terracotta. And the same is also true where sometimes folks will put plants that don't need to be in terracotta, like ferns. I've seen folks put small, like the little cypress trees, little conifers, and people will put them into terracotta, and then they dry out way too quickly. So these are plants that once they start to dry, they want to get soaked. And with the terracotta, terracotta wicks water away from the substrate. So what ends up happening is that now that plant is getting way too dry too fast, when it actually wants some of that extra moisture. So just make sure that you're doing your research, because it's species dependent. It's completely species dependent what kind of pot is best suited. So terracotta is not good across the board. Glossy ceramic, kind of pots are not good across the board. So just making sure you're double checking that before you're repotting your plant and switching it out. Now, sometimes you just see that the plant is very root bound. So there are some species that kind of like being root bound, things like Scindapsus, Pothos, Sansevieria. They, even philodendrons, they like to be somewhat root bound. Of course, not to the point where they're completely, there's only roots in the pot. They're breaking the pot. You can't see soil anymore. It's just roots. So that of course can be excessive, and you'll see sometimes a plant that will be in a pot for several years. It's just full of roots. And then you actually start to see that the plant is looking kind of sickly. And so this is because the roots have just kind of encircled over and over and over to the point where now they're suffocating themselves. They can no longer take up water. They're kind of cutting off their own oxygen supply. They're basically strangling themselves because there's just nowhere to go. They're just growing in a complete circle. So this can happen. We see this, it's a great example is if you live in a city where they have tree pits. So in many cases, a lot of these trees, the pits are way too small. And so this is something you can actually witness in person at a larger scale when you actually look out and you see these trees and the roots are kind of growing in like a square around the base of the tree. And so this is an example of girdling. And so where the roots basically start strangling themselves. And this can very much be replicated inside of the pot. So it can become stressful. So while there are some plants that like to be somewhat root bound, if it's left, it can definitely become very, very stressful. Then if a plant is getting too large up top, right, for the pot, and it's starting to cause the pot to tip over, things like this. Now, this is also where you need to think about, because in some cases, some plants, like certain cacti, for instance, while they get very tall, what's happening inside of the pot, itself, those roots, they're very shallow. It's definitely not filling the entire root, but there is a lot of growth up top. Another good example are African violets, where they are growing, in a rosette, and they're kind of splaying out, right? And so folks go, oh, so this needs a new pot because look how much it's over the edge of the pot. So I need to put in a bigger pot, and you don't. So sometimes some plants will grow, out of the pot, and that's perfectly fine. You don't need to repot. But now let's say you're in this predicament where you have, like, we had a student show us a climbing aloe, right? Where it's getting so large that it's starting to collapse right out of the pot. So there's a couple ways to fix this. If upgrading into the same size pot that's maybe a different shape, that can be done. I wouldn't recommend going really large in terms of kind of upgrading by size of the pot. And another option is then also to put that pot into yet another larger pot to kind of help kind of keep the plant upright. That can totally work. So it's not always the case that you're going to have to repot a plant in that situation. And yes, it can get stressful for the plant if there is no support. So having stakes, things that are going to help offset that, because you will see, as we saw with that example, where the plant is now kind of getting stuck, and what ends up happening is it comes across the edge, and so these leaves can snap, or it makes them very very delicate because they got kind of used to being supported. So when you finally kind of release them from that support, they also snap because they weren't used to holding up their own weight. So that can totally happen as well. And then the last ones, so while I mentioned overwatering, we talked a lot about that, so I can kind of skip that, but the pest one. So you have pests. That's another big reason why your plant might get very stressed. It's under attack. So you need to help it, and it's a specific type of pest. that is indeed growing inside of the soil, right? It's reproducing in that mix, and you have no choice. You have to repot it. So this can definitely be causing your plant a lot of stress, and it's understandable. And with all of these, it's always just understanding, like I mentioned, the risk versus the reward. Is it something you absolutely have to do? If it's not, then understanding that there are consequences. The plant might start to do poorly. You might lose the plant. That can happen. So understanding that that can happen if you're doing this when it's not necessary. But another thing too is, what if your plant is in this really precarious situation? You have no choice. So you're going to try. This is your last ditch effort, and if it lives, it lives, but it's in a really bad spot. So you know you might lose it, but you're going to try to save it anyway, right? So those can be completely valid reasons, right? And just thinking, okay, I understand. I understand what this undertaking entails, right? So I'm going to bring out a plant that is currently very root bound. And what other one should I grab? So I'm going to grab one like that. And I'm going to grab one with some substrate that needs to be changed, so that you can just kind of see that as an example. And yes, I see there's questions in the chat. So let me answer those real quick. Let's see here. Can I? Oops. That's not what I was trying to do. Hold on. Let me stop the share. Where are you? Okay, let me just, I guess it just wants me to finish this and then I can stop the share. But yeah, so next week we will be doing a Q&A, so that you are aware. And this is a completely free class. If you'd be interested in offering a tip, more than welcome, but absolutely not necessary. So I am going to be resetting up my Patreon. So I had a lot of students telling me, you should have a Patreon, and I had created one several years ago, and I just kind of let it fall by the wayside. So I'll be sprucing that up and starting to put links and things like that on there. And yeah, in case anyone is interested, because I had a lot of folks saying get a Patreon. So so this is my Venmo in the meantime, but I will be setting up a Patreon. So totally no worries, no pressure. just an option. And if you do want to get in touch, definitely reach out at info at urbangarden.eco. You can check out on the website, urbangarden.eco, upcoming events. There is a free class coming up on herbalism. It's called Intro to Herbal Preparations. So just a shout out there. And it's being done to get donations for Herbalists Without Borders. It's a wonderful charity. So it's a free class going on. And if you would like to donate, and that is going to be on July 30th. And so the information is on the website. It's also in the Facebook group if that is of interest. And then if you are in New York City on August 6th, the afternoon of August 6th, we're going to be meeting in Central Park for a plant walk. So if you are in New York City, definitely check that out. It's pay what you can. You won't be turned away. It's $1, whatever you want. Pay what you can, and we can go and explore some of the greenery in Central Park. So if you're here in the city, definitely register, and I'd love to meet some of you in person, because I know we have a lot of New Yorkers in the audience. There we go. So now it lets me stop the share. There we go. Yeah, it wasn't letting me stop the share before. Here we go. So let me see these chat questions. Oh, Patricia, I hope you're faring well in this heat wave. Yes, so far so good. It's been pretty bad. Um, and yeah, it was pretty substantial. We had my cousin's wedding on Saturday. It was so hot. It was so hot. Oh my gosh. So yeah, we're definitely staying more indoors, and we keep getting weather advisories. So it's pretty bad. Everywhere's hot. Everywhere it's really really hot. Um, Sandra, do we have to register every week now? No, no. Once you register, it gives you this link, and this is the same link. So you just click join meeting at this time every week, and it's the same one. It's the same one. So no worries. I tried to keep it simple. So I set it up to keep going until like January, and then when it's like November, I'll just add more dates. But yeah, it's just an ongoing meeting that's the same link every time. So you can just save this link, um, and that's all. I'll put the link in the chat in case you might have found like the link in some different way and you're not sure uh, what the link was. I'll drop that in the chat right now. There you go. Let me put that. Yeah. And so if for any reason you lose the link, that's the link right there. Just join in. Just join in when we're in session, and that's it. Trying to make it easy. Let's see here. Brenda, good morning to you too. And Diana, welcome from Florida.
Thank you.
Where do you? Oh, I'm sorry. Hello.
No, I just said thank you.
Oh yeah.
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, of course. Let's see, where do you cut the aloe leaf when you want to use it? That's a great question. So you want to get as close to the base as you can. So you don't want to leave an excessive amount of leaf. Now, if it's your house plant and it just got damaged on the tip, and so you're just trying to remove just the very tip, that's perfectly fine. But if you're actually trying to use the leaf, you for your purposes, you can definitely actually freeze the aloe vera gel. So if you don't end up using the entire leaf at that time, you can definitely save it for later. But yeah, getting as close as you can to that base is going to be the best way. Just so then it can it calluses over, it kind of scabs perfectly fine. If you leave a lot and you kind of you cut and you kind of leave like a chunk there, sometimes that can start to rot or things like that. So you kind of want to keep an eye on it. So yeah, if you kind of leave like a little bit of a stub, so yeah, try to get as close to the base. And what's your take on self-watering pots? Oh, that's a good one. Yes, this is difficult. So there's a couple. So there's a couple different types of self-watering pots. So there are some, oh, here's a good example. So I actually have to change the water on this one, but I got this Clusia, and I've never had this type of pot. So I wanted to see what this was like. And it seems to be happy. So, but there's this type of pot, and so it's through cork, and it has the roots exposed like this. I've never had a plant like in this type of situation. It's really happy. I've tried growing Clusia before, and it was very, very, I gave it a nice airy substrate. I just was not doing very well. And I've had this one now for gosh, 2 months. and it's happy. So I'm like, all right, maybe this is the type of situation that it wanted, and it's putting out a bunch of new growth. So these are new. These are new. Were just starting when I got it. So it's happy. So in this kind of situation, this is working. There are other pots like the self-watering pots. I'm trying to see if I see one that I might be able to show you. That have, they're white with this kind of black net kind of interior. So those I've found it can actually end up, I've had a lot of mosquitoes in that type of situation, like mosquito larvae growing in there. And I've also seen that a lot of the plants that I've had in that situation where I gave them a little string for like a wick, that they end up getting mold growth. So I just removed the wick and I just stopped using it as a self-watering pot. So I had a weird situation with those pots. So I stopped using them for their intended purposes. Now I have seen some that are now coming out that are kind of a terracotta type and that have a reservoir. So I haven't used those personally. But I've seen a lot of people using them. I had a client who got one as a gift and there's a snake plant in there, and so far so good. And they told her to just fill that up once a month and to leave it as is, and the plant's happy so far. So yeah, I think it really depends on the pot itself, like on the design. I like being able to see. So if I'm gonna have like a wick system, I think I would prefer something that's a glass, something where I can actually see the roots and see that they're okay and there's no mold or anything growing. For other pots, like I have one for my palm that I needed to get a larger pot for my palm, and it just happens to have like a little section on the bottom that's like fastened in that works as a reservoir for self-watering. I mean, the water still escapes if I water it. So I mean, so far it's fine. So yeah, I really think it's just the type of self-watering pot makes all the difference. And just for me personally, if I'm going to be using anything like this, I just prefer something that I can actually visually see, because I start to kind of worry. And then if the plant starts to do poorly, I would like to just that's just me. I like to actually see what's going on. And I do have a lot of plants that are in water propagations. And so it is a great thing to do. But yeah, for something, if I'm setting it up that way, I would probably want to just have something that I can see. Yeah, that it sounds like the reservoirs type is best. Yeah.
So thanks, Jocelyn. You kind of answered my next question. Would have been the trays that come with the flower pots that the water drains into, to use that as a reservoir for the bottom watering plants. Is that a good idea? Just to add water to that tray or that trough?
So in that case, what ends up happening is, well, if you watered the plant and then all that excess water fell into the saucer, and then you see, it's like 30 minutes and the water hasn't been soaked up, that usually means that was all the excess. And so your pot that substrate can no longer take up any more moisture. So I would dump that out just so that your plant's not sitting in all that extra water. Now, if your plant is dry and you're trying to bottom water, if you try to just fill the saucer, it might get a little excessive because it's so shallow. I mean, if you want to do that, you're like, okay, I'm going to keep, filling it in today, like in the span of an hour, and see how much it'll take until it no longer takes. And then I'm like, all right, that's it. You can totally do that if you like. I prefer putting something that's just a little taller, because then I can just fill it. So like with these like pots, like I'll take something like this and I'll put, a smaller pot into it, and then I can fill it up about halfway. And then it just takes it, and I don't have to worry about spilling or having to refill it, because it's quick. So I do have quite a few of these.
Yeah, that's a good way to do that.
Yeah. So I do that. I take, that's how we do a lot of, because we have so many, what we'll do is we have a stack of these. So we put them all on the dining room table, and then we put the plants and with the little pitcher going around and filling all of these. And then, go and do another chore, wait 30 minutes to come back, and then you see that they're watered and it's great. Put them back, and that's the only way.
Right.
For the smaller, sorry, some telemarketer is trying to call my phone right now. For the smaller plants, I use a tray system. And so I have a bunch of these. And so I have a bunch of these. And so what I do is these are for my like 1, 2 to 3 inch pots, all fit in here. So what I'll do is I'll line them up like these guys behind me. So I'll line them up. I fill up the tray, and I can vacuum clean this little shelving unit here, and all the plants are getting watered passively. So that's one way of doing it. It's especially if you have a lot of plants, that's the really only way. Because if you're doing each and every plant, and I've mentioned before, I'll probably make this a class where next time I have to like really water these, I'll make that a class so I can just show you what it entails, because things like that, it can take a really long time. And so trying to actually have a system makes it much, much easier, because if you were to just do each plant one at a time, I would be here probably half of the day at this point, because right behind me, there's like 51, 52 different species. Wow. And in our house, we have over 300. So there's over 100 in the kitchen. There's over 100 in the bedroom. And then there's the 50 here. Across from me, there's like another 30. And then my husband has a couple dozen in the office.
Wow. Do you have an outside garden too?
No. No, I would love to. Yes. We do have land in Costa Rica, and so we're actually heading over there this year, and we're hoping to break ground. And that's the plan, is to set up a permaculture garden there, and a greenhouse. And I want to make it a place where folks can come. So we're gonna have like the main house, and we're gonna build like cabins. And so that's the plan, is that then folks can come and stay and garden and hang out. And I have relationships with local conservation groups, and so we can do like some reforestation work and things like that. So that's the long-term plan.
Beautiful. Wow.
So hopefully. So hoping to break ground, this year. Let's see here. Adeline, so some self-watering seems good for a long time with a reservoir. However, the soil seems to build up, so you can hardly find room to add water. Yes, that can happen sometimes with the, if you have really hard water too, what can happen is there might be a buildup of salts, definitely. And so you might experience that. Give me 1 second. Maple, what are you doing? 1 second. Yes, meow. What are you doing? You are tipping stuff over. When Maple doesn't get attention, he starts to do things to get your attention. All right, buddy. All right, hold on. You can't be tipping plants over. That's Oh, in the meantime, let me grab the plant I was going to grab. Here we go. That this guy is in the wrong substrate, so we're gonna do this one. And where is the one that is very much, here we go. Yep, this one is root bound. All right, let me move this clusia. All right. And let me just grab the potting mix. So I recently switched to having my potting mix in these cereal containers. And I absolutely love it. It's the best. Highly recommend it. And so what I was able to do is the whole top comes off. But if I just wanted to make a mix, I can just pop open this little part and do it this way as well. Absolutely love this. So I had them in these kind of giant round plastic jugs, and now in terms of putting them on my shelf, it's just so much more space and it holds a lot more volume. So I think I'm gonna stick with using these. So far, so good. So far, so good. And here is my tropical mix and my perlite. Yep, here we go. All right, so tropical mix, some perlite, and I'll get all right, here we go. All right, come on, guys. Cool. So I also love getting these. Another recommendation is they're $1. So these are oil pans. So that you can use when you're changing your oil for your car. These are great for mixing soils. They're wonderful. Also, when you're repotting smaller plants, it's really inexpensive. So another little thing you can get at like a local dollar store that's really, really inexpensive. With these cereal containers, I got these on Amazon, but I had bought my original set from a local store here, and then I couldn't find them. They just had them out of stock. So I just went online and I saw that on Amazon they were selling them. So I was like, yes. So I got more. So now I have like 3 of these full of perlite. I have one for cocoa coir, one for worm castings, one for orchid bark. So I have like one for a bunch of my different mixes, for cactus mix, for tropical mix. So these are great. So I really, really, really recommend these. So I'm gonna do a little mix here and kind of do here. You'll see with a little bit of perlite. So this is a Florida green that I recently got. It's acclimated. It's been here for a little over 2 weeks. The substrate, it's definitely in a really coarse substrate. It's really kind of peaty, and I'm noticing a lot of die off right here around the base. There were a bunch of little leaves, and the roots are definitely exposed, and they're trying to escape as well. So this is one of those where it's just necessary, and the leaf that was opening when I bought it, just not, it's very thin and not doing really well. So I'm just gonna switch it out. I think it's just better at this point if I just completely switch out the substrate, but I did want to wait at least 2 weeks at the very least before I repotted it. And so this is, you'll see a lot of folks recommending this because, you know, the acclimation period when you first purchase a plant and it's getting used to your home, that is a lot of stress on that plant. And so you want to make sure that you're not adding on to that stress by kind of upending its entire situation. So waiting until at least it gets past that phase of first, you know, that first phase of stress, and it's kind of already going to be suited for your home, and then repotting it. It's just a little safer than trying to do it immediately when you get home. That's increasing that likelihood that you might end up really seriously damaging the plant. So definitely don't do that. I'm throwing a little bit of succulent mix in here. So what have I put in here? I'm about to show you. Here we go. Alrighty. So there's a mix here of perlite. There's orchid bark here. There's a nice chunky orchid bark. What I also put in here is a mix. It's a pre-made tropical mix that does have a little bit of cocoa coir, so it does. But what it also has that it includes is lava rock. Just kind of hard to see here, but there's some lava rock in here as well. So again, it helps it with that drainage. And then I did add just a little smidge of succulent soil, and so that adds a little bit more perlite, and it just doesn't retain as much moisture as conventional potting mixes do. So so something that looks really nice and airy. This is what you're going to want for an aeroid, for something like this Florida green here. You're going to want that airiness. You don't want something that just looks brown. definitely don't want that, because that's going to retain way too much water. That's an excess of organic material, and it's going to inhibit that uptake of water. If it gets really dry, it's going to keep your plant from being able to really get oxygenated as well. So yeah, it's just you might run into a lot of trouble if your mix is completely brown, and you're talking about a plant that doesn't like wet feet, something that might be epiphytic, right? Something that might live in trees or be hemi-epiphytic, which lives part of its life. It might start in the ground and then crawl up the tree. So that's not something you want in a really dense mix. Oh yeah, Beverly, of course. Beverly wants to share some. Beverly, would you like to show on the camera? I'm just gonna, I'm sorry?
Yeah, do I have to share, right? Can I do that
now? Yeah, hold on 1 second. So let me put you on spotlight as I'm moving this stuff off my table. I grabbed a bunch of things on my table so I can move it, so I can start to show you. So in the meantime, feel free. Let me, how do I, here you go, ask to start video, and then it should let me.
So I could start it then?
Oh yeah, okay. Absolutely. I'm just trying to find you here.
Oh.
Where did you go? Gallery. Let me switch it to gallery view. Here you go, and then spotlight.
Okay, now
add
if
spotlight
on my screen, how can I do that? I'm not sure how to do that.
Oh, to share. Okay, so 1 second. I'm gonna give you host privileges for a second, and then
Okay.
you can,
Does that work?
let's see here. If I give you host privileges, it should. Do, 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 do.
I clicked on it. I
Here we
don't know
go.
how to,
Make a host. So I'm gonna try to do it this way.
all right.
Here we go. So I just made you the host, so it should let you share.
Can you see?
Yes. Okay.
I
Yeah, I see the aerial route is perfectly normal. That's perfectly fine. So don't worry about the aerial route. That leaf though,
the leaf to the right, that one
yeah.
right there.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on to your thought. Now, I just want you, can you see this one too?
No. So far I'm just seeing this one.
Okay. I guess I can only show one at a time. Yeah, I saw that. I see those little area roots. I don't know if you can see the markings. If you look real closely, about maybe 6 inches above, there's a little blue line.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much growth I had in about 3 days.
Okay. Oh, that's perfectly fine. I mean, with the aerial roots, what you could do, so if they are bothering you, if you think they're just, growing at a pretty quick rate, you could cut them back. That's perfectly fine. So that's not going to hurt your plant.
Now,
So
when you say cut back, how much would you suggest?
as much as you want. So if you want to cut it to the base, that's perfectly fine. If you wanted to, cut the whole thing, or just, up to where you'd prefer it to be, that's perfectly fine. Another option is to actually roll it into your pot.
Oh, take the very end and put it in the dirt?
Yes.
Back into the dirt?
Yes. So what you can do is just so there was someone who was actually talking about this recently. I'm trying to think. I think it was on TikTok or something. And but I mean, I know you can put them into the pot, but what this other person was talking about was sometimes they do get pretty stiff. But that you can kind of crack them slightly, and that they'll be fine. So yeah, you can just kind of lead it around your
Bring it into here?
yeah, put it into the actual soil. Yes, you can totally do that. Kind of encircle it around, and it should be fine.
Okay. Well, okay. In all fairness, I wanted to show you another portion because I want you to see the size of it, and I'm trying to figure out how to do it. So bear with me if you don't mind. I wanted to. Let me see.
Now, is that leaf that's wrinkled? That leaf, is it soft to the touch? Is it crispy?
I looked at it. I have to touch it again. I don't remember.
Okay.
But my thought is the size of the pot. Hold on for just a moment. I'm going to show you a slightly different one. Now, this is the actual size of the pot.
That's a beautiful plant.
Thank you. And the roots are on the other side coming down here. You don't see the roots on this side. So, is the pot too small?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think it's too small. Unless you are seeing that the roots inside of the pot are outgrowing the pot, if I mean that looks like a pretty good size. So Monstera do like to be somewhat root bound, so they do prefer that, like in, let's say in this kind of in proportion to the top to the pot, this works pretty well. So unless you start to see that those roots are now taking over the pot where you can't see any soil anymore, they're completely taking over the pot, then that's different. That's a different situation. But if it looks nice and healthy, and if you were to lift the plant out of the pot to see the soil, and the roots are nice and healthy, and they're not just, it's not a wall of roots, then that's perfectly fine. So it's when you get to that point where it's like a wall. I'm trying to think if, hold on, I wanted to show you if this one lets me do it, because this is one that I'm going to show that has a lot of roots. I think I need to go with scissors on this one.
Do I stop sharing?
Oh, sure.
I mean, I think I just want you to get the total picture.
No, of course.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, if it's not, yeah, if it's not completely taking over the pot, I think you're perfectly fine. Someone just mentioned, yes, it may be time to stake the Monstera. Yes. So sometimes when these aerial roots, oh, I think, Beverly, I think you're gonna have to make me the host again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. No worries.
Okay, how do you, okay, I'm sorry. Let me
No, you're perfectly fine. So you're gonna go and into participants. So where you see it says participants.
Okay.
And then it'll pop up our names. And when you hover over my name, it'll say mute or more. And when you click on more, so it should let me see if I can reclaim host. Oh yes, oh, it let me do it. All right, you're perfectly fine. I was able to, yeah, I did it. You're
okay,
good.
sorry about that.
No apologies at all. Let's see here. You're perfectly fine, no worries. Just trying to figure out the technology here. All right, cool. But yes, so with the aerial roots, what are the jobs of aerial roots? So aerial roots actually do quite a few things. It's not just to stick to things, right? As we usually see that's the case, is they do provide scaffolding for the plant. You know, they help climb, but they also do find extra moisture, find another area. There are some plants that do have that capability to also send out runners that look very similar to like aerial roots, but it's the green flesh. And they do kind of a similar thing where they kind of look in, find a spot, will root there and then produce another plant. But with aerial roots, they'll still be looking for more moisture. They'll be looking for somewhere to climb. They'll also be looking as well. Sometimes they actually grow into the dirt, and they can, as you see, they get really hard. So what ends up happening is that they can work like what is called a stilt root. So basically they can offset the weight of the plant as well. So so let's say the plant's kind of leaning, you might notice that it'll send an aerial root out that hits the ground that ends up kind of being a counterweight, kind of holding it upright. And there are a lot of plants that actually do this, and they're called stilt roots. So it's really cool when you see the different things that the plants can actually figure out for themselves. But yes, staking the Monstera, it's definitely large enough where you can start staking it. So consider something like a moss pole or a cocoa coir pole, something like that, where you can actually tie it to a pole and let it start to climb up.
Okay, I will say I do have some stakes there already, but you're saying some additional stakes. tie those roots to the stake and try to direct it upward?
So you want something that it can actually physically stick to. So something like what I have for my, let's see here. This is the closest one I have right now. Here we go. So hold on, it has a really long runner that we've been trying to manage because it keeps growing. But yeah, so something where you can actually stick it with plant tape, and this is something you're gonna have to spray, and then the aerial roots will actually start to stick to that surface. So you want something like that. And you can buy these. I have these because they can actually be layered, so they fit into one another. Let me grab 2 of these. Aha, so I love these, as you can see. They can be just added on to. So
Really?
you can stick one in, and as the plant, so the aerial roots will stick to this. So of course you take the plastic off, but they'll start to stick to that. And then let's say now it grows past that, you can easily purchase the other one, stick it in, and you can keep going up. And so this is great because then you don't have to rip the plant off of these stakes and then start over again. So that's what ended up happening a lot previously, where you would get it and it would grow too much and then you needed to upgrade. But the only way would be to basically rip it off and start over again. So someone came up with these.
So what do you call that item again? It looks like
these are it's a cocoa coir pole. So it's like a moss. We call it a moss pole. Yeah, these are great. I highly recommend these.
Oh.
Okay.
So I guess the thing is I see I can get those and wrap them around, and the other option is to put the roots in the soil again.
You could do that with those really long ones. Yes.
Yeah,
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, you can totally do that. I'm gonna try to pull up what I had purchased. I can put that link in the chat. I think it is here. It should be poll. There we go. So these are the ones that I get. And what I love is that these actually come with plant tape. They actually just sell their own plant tape with it. So yeah, and it was like a pack of 4 poles for $14.99. So it's really cheap.
Okay.
And yeah, so you can totally do that. Now, someone's asking, what are you going to do with the wilted leaf? So do you have plans on cutting that leaf?
I don't know. Should I? I mean, it doesn't look really, it doesn't make a good photo appearance. When I'm up looking at it, it doesn't seem that bad, but again, you asked me what does it feel like to the touch, and I just don't remember.
Yeah, no. You know, and sometimes some Monstera leaves can come out looking a little funky. They can come out looking a little weird. So sometimes it might look like it's wilted in the photo, but when you actually up close to the plant, it's just the way that the leaf is. It kind of comes out kind of curly. So if it looks like a healthy leaf, it's just a weird shape. I wouldn't say you have to cut it at all. If it is kind of soft, like mushy to the touch, then I would say to remove it, because that could be a sign that it's decaying. So you want to remove it before that spreads to the rest of the plant.
Okay.
If it's dry, if it's crispy, what you could do is just let it go yellow and die off. If it's crispy, because what ends up happening is that most of the time the plant just kind of diverts the moisture and any sugars that were in the leaf and kind of pulls it away. And then the leaf just comes off automatically. It creates what is called an abscission layer. So it's kind of like it self-amputates.
Okay.
So basically it'll create kind of a scab layer. It moves everything over. It takes all the sugar, all the moisture, creates kind of a block, like a dam. And then that leaf just shrivels up, and then you know, one day you just hear poof, it just falls. And so that can, you know, if you see that it's kind of crispy, you can totally do that. But anytime you see anything that's like soft and gooey, remove it as quickly as possible. So if it's not like that, you're fine. No worries.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me see here. Hank, should the roots ever be cut if you are using a large pot and then encircling the plant? Well, if you're using a large pot, and if we're talking about aerial roots and you're kind of putting them in the soil mix, I don't think you have to cut them necessarily. If it's just kind of one aerial root, I think it's perfectly fine. Now, if the plant's already pretty girdled in that pot, then yeah, kind of adding something else in there might not be the best situation. And Adeline says, I was going to say, if anyone wants to see root bound, take a look at spider plants when roots are coming out at the bottom. The roots completely circulate the plant. It is something to see. Oh yes, absolutely. Let me see if I can actually pull up a photo. Spider plant root bound. Yeah, spider plants have that tendency to get very, very root bound. Another one is Scindapsus. So what they call satin pothos. Definitely end up getting really, really root bound here, so that you can see. So here's just an example with a spider plant. You can just see this is severely root bound. So where you're only seeing roots. So this is what we mean by root bound. You're only seeing roots. You're not seeing, basically the soil is maybe inside of this tangle of roots. It's more root than soil at this point. So this is true, like this is something that is truly, truly root bound. Here are other examples. You know, this is truly, look at this one. Truly, truly root bound. And so you can see why this would cause a problem, right? So the roots, they're so squished together. They're no longer able to soak up water effectively. They're so squished together. It's like, you know, sardines. They can't spread out. They need to, you can kind of see here that fuzz. So you can kind of see like on the roots that they have some fuzz on them. So if that's being squished, they're not going to be effectively taking up water or being able to really get oxygen, right? Because all that surface area is kind of clumped together. So you end up kind of in this situation where it's just severely, severely, severely root bound.
Jocelyn, does this happen fast?
No. Now it can happen in terms of the fast. It's sometimes when you purchase plants that are already mature plants.
Okay.
So for some, like for example, with spider plants, we can use that as a great example. If you buy a mature spider plant from the store and it's in a big, like 6-inch, 8-inch pot, and it already has babies, it's very likely that this is what's happening inside of the pot. And so a lot of plants, when they get root bound, they start to produce pups, the ones that can. So things like spider plants do that. What's another good example? Strawberry begonias as well. They can also start to put out pups. Yeah, sometimes also plants that are flowering. So a lot of these plants that you purchase, like mums or you know, petunias, things like that you're purchasing in the spring, and they're already flowering. Usually if they already have flowers, they already have spent flowers, it's very likely they're actually already close to being root bound. So yeah.
Okay.
They'll so let's see here. And I think I had one more chat. Yes, Adeline. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was like, oh wait, I can actually share a picture. This is great. I love this capability here. All right, cool. So I'm gonna quickly repot. I guess I'll repot at least this guy. It was just that he is in this really thick kind of peaty substrate, and he's completely root bound, and you can see and I wanted to repot him now, but I think I'm actually going to have to really be careful with this guy because I'm going to have to use scissors, and I thought I might be able to do a slight pull, but some of these roots are a lot thicker than I thought, so it might take I might have to be a little more do this a little more gingerly than originally planned, but I can do this one just to show you. So this is exactly how the plant was sold. This leaf was already opening up, but it was starting to look kind of damaged. So this is what, when it finally opened up, this is what it has. It's very odd. But they also had it tied up with this twine, and it's in this really kind of awful kind of mix, as you can see. And you see how it dries and then it becomes solid. It's just this like brick. It's like literally I can't even stick my finger in there. And so this is what it was sold to me as. I mean, it was like $5, but so I was like, oh, this is perfect. I was trying to find a plant that I could use as an example, and I didn't have a Florida green in my collection, so I was like, here we go. This works out perfectly. And this is also a great example to show. So this is what the immature leaves look like. So if you ever start these from a cutting, so if you were to get a cutting and it's the more mature looking leaf, and then it starts to put out these types of leaves, it kind of reverts back to its immature leaf growth. And then after it puts out a couple of these, it starts to build up that energy reserve, and then it starts to really put out these mature looking leaves again. So don't worry about that. A lot of folks will buy things like pothos or get a monstera leaf, and it's this huge, beautiful fenestrated leaf. And then when you finally start having it grow, it puts out like a little heart leaf with no fenestrations. And so that's completely normal. It's basically, it's working with what energy reserves it has, and creating fenestrations, creating a large leaf takes up a lot of energy. And if it's a cutting, it doesn't have roots, so it can't really adequately replenish its energy. It has maybe that one mature leaf that can only make so much sugar, and depending also on the lighting situation. So don't be surprised when you start to see immature leaves on cuttings. It's once they kind of get established, that's when you start to see that those bigger leaves start coming in. So you might get a lot of these types of immature leaves before that happens. But yeah, so let's work with this guy just to kind of show you how this process looks. So this is with a stake. Now with twine, I don't recommend twine. One being, this doesn't stretch, right? So if it can be very abrasive as well, so it can cause trauma to the stalks. So I do really recommend something like that plant tape. It's much more gentler. It has a little more give on it too. So as the plant grows, it's something that it's just softer, and it's something you can easily remove. It's also reusable. Twine, of course, can be reusable, but if it were to get wet, like if you have it in a greenhouse and it gets very moist in there, it can start to get mold, and yeah, so it can end up not being something you can reuse again. Now this guy is starting to also show a little aerial root popping in. So this is this little nub that you can see right here. So I always like to show these because I get a lot of questions about aerial roots. I get a lot of folks asking me, what is this little thing that's growing? Is it a bug? And then they try to scratch it off. So this is it's just an aerial root. It's just a little node right there. This is the node, that whole area, and that is a little aerial root. And this is a new leaf that's starting to come in. So nothing to worry about. It's not an insect, it's not anything. And what you're seeing here, so this little thing, this isn't a leaf. This is called a cataphyll, and this is something you see on philodendrons. And so this basically forms as the leaf is forming as kind of like a cap to the leaf. And as the leaf comes out, this kind of pulls back and eventually dries out like this. Now, you could leave it there. That's not a problem. It doesn't harm the plant in any way. Sometimes they get crispy enough where you just kind of give it a little tug and it comes right off. Not a problem either. So you don't have to worry about that at all. So no worries. Let me see here. Adeline, I find it questionable when I bottom water Echeveria and hens and chicks, as I wonder if it has been absorbed enough as the soil is still dry on top. Okay, good question. Yeah, I mean, if you're bottom watering and you're not seeing that the soil is getting fully saturated, that might actually mean you have to put a little bit more water inside of your reservoir dish, like when you are actually bottom watering. So usually it can be, depending on the size of the pot, like I fill it 1/3 or 1/2. But if it's something that you're noticing, like, well, it's not getting fully saturated, you might need to put a little bit more water in there. So with this guy, there's only this one root that's escaping. So I'm not going to worry too much if that's lost in the process. But yeah, it's definitely, oh, that was much easier than I thought. Okay. It was giving me a little bit of a fight. But here you can see, so this is a good example to show you what is not root bound. So this is not root bound. This has a nice web of roots. These are healthy roots, that white healthy roots, like beige off white. That's healthy roots. That's perfectly fine. Now, this root that was hanging out of the pot, it's brown and desiccated, so it's dead root. So this is what a dead root would look like, right? It's brown, it has no life to it. And if I do this, yeah, it comes right off. So this is a great test, is to roll the roots between your fingers. If they turn into dust or they easily rip off, that's a great indication that root is dead. That is done. So dead as a doornail. So you're like, okay, well, you can go in and just really do that. So that was part of that root that got, so here we go. So this was the main root that started and then went and escaped out the drainage hole. So here's another great example of a dead root, right? That's hanging off of a live, nice, healthy root. So again, you can easily roll and it can come right off. Now you can use scissors totally too. That's perfectly fine. Just remember, if you're using any physical, like actual tools, clippers, scissors, things like that, make sure you always spray them with rubbing alcohol. You can cross-contaminate plants. So plants, just like us, have bacteria and viruses, but they also have fungi in their soil and their substrates, sometimes actually inside the leaves as well. So what ends up happening is you can cross-contaminate this way. So if you're not sanitizing your scissors, what ends up happening is if one plant, let's say, has mosaic virus, which is something you don't want, that's just going to kill your plant, you end up passing it over to your other plants by doing so. And some of these things, even just by touching, so even if a plant that has mosaic virus is next to another plant and the leaves touch, that's enough for that to be transmitted that way. So just to kind of show you here, so this mix here, you can see it's all brown. There's no perlite in this mix. It's solely like a cocoa coir and peat. It's also really thick and hard. It's crispy. It's like a chocolate chip cookie, like Chips Ahoy cookie. That's the best way to to kind of explain the texture. So you want it to feel more like fresh baked, you know, that like nice where you can really pull it apart. This feels like really stale Chips Ahoy cookies, where you touching it and it's like it crumbles. I can literally take it out in chunks. It's super thick and crunchy. So this already shows me, right, that this is not great substrate. It should not be coming out in giant chunks, right? That's just no. And so I'm going to kind of remove the top edge here. So I'm kind of removing some here from the top edge just to kind of give me something to work with here. And now, wow, it's coming out like just in giant sections, and there's parts of dead root inside. And so some of that soft soil is actually located inside. So the outside has dried, become hydrophobic. So it kind of creates like a capsule. So you might find softer soil inside because it's kind of locking in any little bit of moisture it might have is deep inside, like in the core. But then the outside is kind of a crust. It basically becomes a crust. So let me put some of this soil in I have a bunch of little containers here for use. All right, cool. So I'm gonna drop this in here. So you want to be as gentle as you can. So right now I'm just removing some of that substrate from the inside because I just don't want it to, you know, get like that crunchiness after I put it into a better substrate. But I'm not going to completely remove, and I'm kind of maintaining the shape. So you can actually now see through the roots here, right? So I'm really not trying to attack the roots. So I see a lot of folks, sometimes they tease the roots out, they like yank the roots. I'm trying to I'm causing damage, obviously, to the roots, but there are some dead roots. So I really do need to pull these out. But I'm trying to be as minimally invasive as I can. So it's like I'm very kind of gingerly removing the soil around these plants, roots here, just really gently. So if I can cause a minimal amount of damage here. Now, this is really what you want to do if your plant is being stressed, right? You don't, it's something like it has root rot. It's like this one, a great example where it's just in a really bad substrate. Just be as gentle as possible. Now, yes, do roots grow back if you cut them? Totally. I've seen people even with Sansevieria and aloes use knives and just chop. And yes, that's most likely the plants will be fine eventually. But it's just really traumatizing for the plant, and it just takes it a while for it to rebound. And so it's still, you know, it's still the growing season here. It's the end of July, but we still have August into September. So I don't necessarily want to completely set this plant back. I do want to get a couple more leaves during the growing season. So trying to not cause a lot of damage. So I'm not removing all of the substrate. So some of this coco coir, this isn't bad for the plant. It just had too much, right? Too much peat, too much coco coir. There's literally no perlite in this. And from what I'm seeing too, is there is a bunch of fertilizer granules. Let me see if I can grab one of these because it's hard to really. So here we go. It's a little green. Wow, there's a thunderstorm. Just heard some thunder. It got really dark all of a sudden, and there's a bunch of thunder. So there's a bunch of fertilizer balls all clumped together right here at the base. So that is a bad thing. Now, what that tells me, and it's not inside the soil. So what that tells me is that someone just kind of put them up on top after the plant was already potted up. And so what ends up happening in that case is that if there's too many of these are slow release. I don't know if you can hear that thunder. these are slow release. And so what happens is that they leach out basically the nutrition every time you water the plant. But what happens is if you put too much, if you're kind of heavy handed with them, what ends up happening is you actually run that risk of causing fertilizer burn. So burning the roots, burning the foliage, because it is pretty close up to the foliage. And then what ends up happening too is that unlike liquid fertilizers, right, that if you were to put it in, you might see the damage within a couple days, usually. This, since it's slow release, you might not actually see that you were too heavy-handed until a month or 2 months from now. And then you'll start panicking because maybe you'll forget that you threw in those granules, right? So you're like, what's happening to my plant? It's just a more of a quite literally a slow burn, quite literally. So you might not notice until it's already showing signs of fertilizer burn. So I have this guy like this. I'm going to use the same pot. No reason to switch it out of the nursery pot. It's going to be perfectly fine in this for now. I'm just putting it with my, you can see the difference in the mix, right? So here's the mix that it was in, right? It's just this brown, completely different substrate. So let me see how this fits in here. I think I need to put a little bit less here. Here we go. And then you can backfill. So I'm gonna put this in here. I'm gonna hold it up. Gonna put this stake in it instead. Gonna hold this guy up. And then once you have it kind of placed in the way you want, you can go ahead and backfill it. So let me put up that little leaf there. Oh, it is coming down. We needed some rain. It's been, oh, it has been so hot here. But that storm sounds angry. Here we go. And you don't want to compact the soil too much either. So, you know, it's also great once you do water, if you see that there's a lot of displacement, or you might notice that you have some. So I do kind of like a light little pat, but not where I'm really crunching anything down, because I don't want to recompact the soil, right? So you don't want to do that. And then I can just grab the plant tape and secure this to this much taller stake than it had. And I'm going to use plant tape instead. Just a much better situation. So just to kind of show you, I figured, you know, just wanted to kind of offer visual aid into the process. And, you know, it's just very gentle. So trying to not stress the plant out more than it is. And as we discussed, there's so many reasons why, you know, your plant might really end up needing to get repotted, whether it is insanely root bound, it's showing signs of rot, or you really do realize this is a really bad substrate and it's already showing me signs. I need to, you know, nip it in the bud, basically. I need to stop this before it escalates. And then the whole plant's going to start to rot. And, you know, yes, it might not be that expensive. Like for this guy, I think it was like $5-10. But still, I want it to survive. So if, you know, sometimes just trying to experiment and kind of play with it, see what you can potentially do to give it a better little life in your home. Definitely try. All right, let me see here. All right, yeah, and so I believe I got to all the questions in the chat. And it is now 1:06, so I will leave it there. But I hope that was informative. And again, hope you're liking this format. I just really like that I can actually talk to you and see your plants and do these kind of things, and I can share my screen. I'm really excited about this. So I hope you are too. And then next week is going to be a Q&A. So come with your plant questions. You're free to also bring a plant up, you know, to show. If you have questions about a specific plant, that's totally fine. And yeah, that's you're more than welcome to join in and yeah, and check that out. Oh, Cheryl, that's great. Oh, Synth, what type of substrate should a clevia have that has been an outdoor plant in SoCal, but is now an indoor plant in Colorado? Ooh. Well, clevias do like a nice, well-draining mix. If it was outdoors in SoCal, I'm assuming it's a pretty, well, I guess it depends. I think in SoCal, because I know California has so many different types of like ecosystems. There's like coastal range. There's some areas that are slightly cooler, and then there's more arid areas. I'm assuming SoCal is probably more arid. I've never been to Cali. That's something on my wish list. But I'm assuming it might be more arid. So clevia in general, though, they would prefer something very well draining. And if it's now indoors in Colorado, I would say stick with well draining with your indoor. If you're keeping it indoors, especially because it's gonna let more air pass through. It's gonna dry more adequately. When your plant's indoors, especially a plant that was used to being outdoors, you want to replicate that quick drying substrate, that air circulation as much as you can. Our house plants, we kind of get them used to that because they're brought up in that type of situation where they're not getting the same type of sunlight and air circulation that they're going to get outdoors. So we kind of mitigate that with all these mixes and things like that. So you might have to kind of play with that with your clevia. But I think, yeah, I think definitely a well draining mix is going to be your friend in that case. Oh, you're very welcome. You're very, very welcome. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Monday. Wow, there is a really big thunderstorm happening right outside. So for those of you who are in insane heat, I hope you get a thunderstorm too. We definitely needed this extra water. But thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your week. And yeah, I hope to see you next week. Have a great one. Have a great one, everyone. Bye.